Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you. Must be Tuesday. Must be 6:30. Coming at you live. Man, I've had a great day. We've got one of our grandsons, James Chandler, says at the end of the day, if he's had a good day, he'll look at me, and my nose is shiny. He looks at memes and he says, "Memes, best day ever." Well, we had one of those today. You know, we moved to the Brazos River at Pecan Plantation 2 or 3 years ago, I guess. We bought the place almost 3 years ago, renovated it, rehabbed it for a while. We moved in probably a little over 2 years ago, and we've been on small stretches of the river, but today we got to hang out with Patrick Clayton, and courtesy of Ben Tabor, Fatties on the Fly Fishing Guide Service, and he sells fly. Look up Fatties on the Fly with an IES, Fatties on the Fly. Anyway, we had such a great time. You know, we live in this cool community, and I haven't been on the river much. Just short stretches just to kind of feel our way out. We got to go all the way from the dam at Lake Granbury all the way around Pecan Plantation, which is about a 14-mile stretch. And it was so much fun. I didn't realize just how much it looked like wilderness. And I knew that all you had to do was go about 40 vertical feet, and there's houses everywhere on one side of the river. We caught over a dozen fish. We caught largemouth bass, spotted bass. We caught sand bass or white bass. We caught some stripers and saw a bunch of gar and buffalo and carp and just all kinds of stuff you see in the river. And it just kind of made me more thankful to do what I do for a living. Hello, John Henry, Dan Friend, Drew Bachman, and Dick Tabbert. Hey, you guys know the drill. You guys watch this show. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like. Share this video to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. So, if you guys will do that, you know, we're still trying to build an audience, and we're so glad that we have you. Hey, Jerry Ollard, I see you on here, buddy. I'm going to give you a phone call here in a couple of days. I got a little project I want to talk to you about. Jerry Ollard is a premier videographer. I just know he's looking, but I don't see where he hadn't made a comment yet. There's Virgil Meyer checking in. He's up in Iowa, and he got him a beautiful lake up there. Let me see what else I got here. I got something coming over the phone. Those guys are pretty funny. So what I thought I'd talk about is it's May, you know, and in your ponds, the spawning is pretty much, the first round of spawning is pretty much done. Now, here's some cool things if you don't know this. Early on in the year, if you have crappie in your lake, which if your lake's 20 acres or bigger, I'm good with it. But under 20 acres, you're probably good with it. But they spawn first in warm water fisheries. After that, the bass start to get on the nest. Bass start making their nest or come back in to sweep out last year's nests. So starting about 58 to 61 degrees, and they start to spawn. And around 63, 64, bluegills begin to spawn. After the bluegills have their first go around, then red-eared sunfish spawn. So what's really cool is all these different fish. Hello, Greg Russell. Good to see you, buddy. It's hashtag Pond Boss Magazine, but I like at Pond Boss Magazine. That works too. We're just trying to get publicity, you know. So one of the cool things about the way nature works is all these different fish spawn at different temperatures. It's temperature driven. So if my very first piece of advice, if you're trying to figure out how to manage your pond better, one of the key points is the temperature. The temperature of your water triggers what's going to happen next. Think about that. All these different fish spawn at different temperatures, and some of them spawn in cycles of the moon. Like largemouth bass, for example, they like to spawn during the full moon. They're really active in that time. They're moving around. And the full moon is a great time for them to spawn, and therefore they do it. You know, and I'll always remember the late Buzz Hartley Fish Farms in Kingman, Kansas. I met him, good gosh, probably 1981, 82. And he was a really good long-distance mentor. Now, you got to remember, way back then, Al Gore had not yet invented the internet. we didn't have cell phones. So the only way guys like me could learn would be to go do it or hang around some of the old heads that could teach us about it or spend time on the phone. And back then, it cost 25 cents a minute to pay Ma Bell for long distance charges. So you talk 10 minutes, it's $2.50. Which I don't know how that compares to cell service nowadays, but I thought it was expensive. But where I'm going, ice water today. But where I'm going is that, the learning curve was steep. And one of the things that Buzz Hartley taught me, he said, when you start to hear the bullfrogs croak, largemouth bass are spawning. Which I thought that was kind of folksy and kind of a wives' tale, but it's the truth. Because bullfrogs come out about the same time that largemouth bass begin to spawn. Now here's the cool thing, is not all fish only spawn once. Bluegill spawn more than once. And largemouth bass can. I've actually documented years where largemouth bass have spawned 3 times. And so it's all triggered by temperature. Now the reason largemouth bass, here's something kind of cool. When the bluegills spawn, they're going to spend all their eggs. They're going to lay eggs in their colonies in little crater-like cattle hoof print size nests. And then they'll go develop new eggs and spawn again in about 6 to 10 weeks. Where largemouth bass, they're going to spawn, and they don't necessarily spawn all their eggs, because all their eggs, like in the ovaries of an 8-pound bass, there might be half a pound of eggs. Well, all those eggs don't mature at the same time. The ones around the outside of the ovaries are more vasculated, so they get mature quicker. And that female bass will spawn those eggs, and the rest of her eggs will begin to mature, and she'll spawn again in the next cycle of the full moon. So Scott Griffiths says, talk about spawning. What age do gizzard shad spawn? Gizzard shad start spawning when they're 2 years old. So that means that they're going to be about 8, 9 inches long before they really start to have any eggs. Now, it's pretty funny. When people ask me how I'm doing, I tell them that I'm still leading a pretty cool life, which is an absolute truth. Last week when I came to you live, I was down at the Bamberger Ranch teaching Aggie students, which I'm absolutely in love with Texas A&M's new Range, Wildlife, and Fisheries Management Department, primarily because of Dr. Roel Lopez, because that guy is running, he's treating that department like a CEO of a major company. Academia is a big deal, but getting things done is a bigger deal. And he cares a little bit less about the ivory tower as he cares about dirt under the fingernails, which he wants all those students to get pond slime and fish slime and muck under their toenails, as well as get out in the range and do controlled burns and figure out how to trap hogs and stuff. Dude, I'm telling you, that guy is stellar. And I love that department, so I got to do that. So, let's go back to the, what's the question? So, gizzard shad spawn at about 2 years old, 9 inches, 10 inches long. Gizzard shad typically live 3 or 4 years, and that's about it. But they can lay sometimes 250,000 eggs, especially those that are 4 or 5 years old that are 2 pounds apiece. And now here's the cool thing about gizzard shad. Gizzard shad, when they reach a certain density, so in other words, so many pounds per acre, they begin to recognize that they're getting overcrowded. They may be running out of food. They're getting older. They give off a pheromone to prevent more reproduction, to minimize overcrowding. And sometimes that pheromone affects the rest of the fish. I've actually seen that happen. Hello, Jay Spires. Ben Kusterin got a question there. Mike Cottrell, good to see you, buddy, Palapena County. So let's see. That's a great question, Ben. I'll get to that right here in a minute. But gizzard shad, here's one of the laws of nature. This is a pretty cool little factoid you guys are going to like. The more parental care that a fish gives to its young, the fewer eggs they lay, because their survival rate goes up. So where I'm going with that is like a bluegill may lay 600 eggs, But that male bluegill is going to sit on the nest and hatch those eggs and nurture those eggs until the swim-up fry can get up and go foraging on their own. Where gizzard shad, they might lay 250,000 eggs, but what they do is squirt them out, get them fertile, wish them luck, adios. You know, and whatever happens, happens. You know, and another cool thing about that is each one of these species of fish, with their parental care, the survival rate of the young goes up. But then when it's time for them to go make an honest living, they're going to be able to survive based on what's offered to them, which is happy water. Now, I'm going to talk about Ben with that here in a minute because I know where he's going with that. You know, with good food chain, fertility, that makes a difference, where they can take nutrients and convert them to flesh, then the survival rate goes up. So I looked at the lake the other day. Oh gosh, where was I? I think I was in Oklahoma. No. Oh, I know where it was. When I was working with those kids down at the ranch, we shocked a span of the Pedernales River at LBJ State Park, Lyndon Baines Johnson LBJ State Park. We shocked about a 4.5, 5 acre stretch of the Pedernales River, and it was loaded with gizzard shad, loaded with carp, common carp, German carp. And they are thriving because everything's perfect for them. We shocked up some nice bass. We found a flathead catfish, bluegills, warmouth. You know, most of those other species of fish were minimized by the fact that the habitat is way more conducive to the fish that were thriving in it. So that's some little tips to help you when you manage your pond, if you can figure out exactly what I was talking about, which sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. So Ben says, have you heard of the aqua thruster? That brand name doesn't strike me, but I know this. Horizontal water movers are outstanding. I love it. Now, his question is, does moving water equal happy water? Moving water contributes to happy water. The more the water can move, the more that it can add to the metabolism and decomposition of all the organic matter that ends up deposited into it. So if you can do that, the more you can move the water, the more you can allow it to communicate with the atmosphere. There's the key right there. The more you can move the water to communicate with the atmosphere, the better opportunity that water has to become more happy. Now, here's what that really boils down to, is when there's additions made to the water, you got nutrients added to it, grass clippings, fish poop, fish food, nitrogen coming out of the air, phosphorus coming off the ground, washed in. All those things are going to dissolve into the water or be absorbed by the water. There's a difference between absorption and dissolving. But what the bottom line is the more the water moves, the more it can touch the atmosphere, where it can absorb oxygen and relieve itself of gases. That's how water becomes more happy. That's why I love babbling streams with cobble. If you can move water across that. An aqua thruster, I don't know what that is because that's a brand name, but any kind of horizontal water movement, as well as, if that horizontal water mover, if you can change the angle of it and let it push water down or up, as well as horizontal, then it's going to help make water even more happy. Great question. That's a good one. I'm glad you started off with that. It's already 6:45. We might make it to 7:15 tonight. Hey, Dan, Wisconsin, 2-acre pond, 7 feet deep, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, bluegill, pumpkin seeds, perch, some walleye, and rainbow trout. That's a lot of fish. A lot of species. Feed 3 times a day. With Aquamax 500, bass sizes all the way up to 20 inches, 5 pounds. Would I be able to put in 1 tiger muskie to cull the bass population for me, and also have 1 big alpha predator to catch, or would it eat too much and ruin the biomass? Let's see, 2-acre pond, there's no chance. Hey, listen, hey Dan, no chance 1 tiger muskie is going to ruin the biomass. And if it does, it won't. But if it did, which it won't, you can catch that fish and eat it. Be sure and get the little bones out of the side of the meat. So, you know what? I think you could even put 2 or 3 tiger muskies in a 2-acre pond. Matter of fact, you could probably put 4 or 5. So, here's how to make that decision, Dan. If if you're seeing a shift in population numbers that you don't like, here's a classic example. Since you've got largemouth bass, they're probably going to be the dominant fish. Can't stand my nose being shutty. Makeup. Hey, come here. Oh wait, I don't have makeup. When the sun's shining or the light's shining off my nose, it drives me nuts. Not really. More water. Hope y'all are laughing at that. I'm trying to be funny. Sometimes it doesn't work. Bass sizes all the way up to 20 inches. You know what? I would preserve my biggest bass. Those tiger muskies are not going to eat those big bass. But if you find that the dominant species is largemouth bass, 8 to 10 inches long, tiger muskies are a good call. Because all those other fish are not, they're not going to be the ones that cause the problem. It's going to be the largemouth bass. Here's the bottom line answer. One big alpha predator will not ruin the biomass of your pond. And even if it did, it'd be 60 inches long and you'd have something to make the news. Todd Austin, checking in from Phoenix. Good to see Todd. One of my good friends out there in Phoenix, I'm not going to say his name, although I kind of want to, but you guys that watch this show a lot and then have read my articles and things, you know that I talk about, 90% of the fish live in 10% of the water. Aaron Matos, oh wait, I said his name, from Phoenix, decided that he was going to think outside my box and create a pond in his backyard a long time ago. He sold this place, but he took this concept. 90% of the fish live in 10% of a pond. Well, in Phoenix, water is a commodity more so than a resource, although it's a resource. So he wanted to have a pond in his backyard, but he wanted to fix it where 100% of the pond would be attractive to all fish. So he got rid of the 90% that fish don't live in and created a mecca. Well, the thing that he taught me a bunch of things. So what he did was he was able to fill the pond up with raw water coming in off the ditch that they also use for firefighting in Phoenix. And you can stand on the dam and see downtown Phoenix. You look over to your left, you see downtown Phoenix. Look to your right, and there's Camelback Mountain. And it gets hot in that part of the planet. That guy, he grew some smallmouth bass in Phoenix, Arizona, which I never thought could happen. But he was recirculating the water, running it through an artificial wetland that he built, and he just got way outside the box and did some pretty cool stuff. So, yes, for Phoenix, you can do some cool stuff. And fisheries in Phoenix is something that's it's a prize. So Todd, I'm kind of preaching to your choir. You know that. Let's see what John Henry's got here. John Henry says, how would you go about getting rid of a pond full of green sunfish, then converting it over to a bluegill? Poor fish dealer slipped me green sunfish instead of true bluegill. Been combating them for 6 years now with little success. Well, John, the first time I really started kind of digging into I tell you what, I used to tell people, rodent on the pond and start over. Well, I came across a pond near Cherokee, Texas, probably, 30 years ago, early 90s, and it sat in the upper part of the watershed was a chicken farm. Well, chicken farms are all the chickens are raised inside, but they got to flush all that chicken poop out and do something with it. Well, they sent it into a lagoon, which then overflowed down the watershed into this guy's pond. And man, I stuck the electrofishing boat in there one day, and all we shocked up were green sunfish anywhere from 2 inches to 7 inches long. Well, I was so surprised by the volume of green sunfish, just the numbers, and as I thought about it, I thought, it'd be a shame to have him kill hundreds of pounds of green sunfish. I had a feeling there had to be 500 or 600 pounds of green sunfish in that 3-acre pond. So I said, what? Let's try before we decide to rodent on it. Let's try something a little different. Let me go see if I can find you a bunch of 12 to 15 inch bass. And I had a lake that I'd stocked, 3 or 4 years earlier, where the bass had started reproducing and it was time to take some of the fish out, but they were pretty young. So I called that landowner and said, hey, I'd like to bring the electrofishing boat over and get about 75 or 80 of your 10 to 14 inch bass that are either underperformers that we stocked originally or young of the year that were 2 years old in that five-year-old lake. He was all for it. So I took like 80 bass over there that were anywhere from 10 to 14 inches long, stocked them in there. It's just kind of tracking that lake. Also stocked, I think it was 150 bluegill adults per acre. So I stocked like 500 adult bluegills in that lake. And I came back in a year and the green sunfish still dominated the numbers. But I saw 3 size classes of bluegill and the bass looked like footballs. Like, you guys have heard me say this, and I give Ray Scott credit. Ray Scott used to say, my bass looked like Alabama deputy sheriff. Well, I've been to Alabama a few times. I've never been pulled over, but I kind of get the image he's trying to convey with that. Well, those bass were chunky, fat, growing really, really well. And 2 years later, I started seeing that the green sunfish numbers were going down and the bluegill numbers were going up. Well, as those bass grew up and began to reproduce, since bluegill in that part of the country spawn 3 to 5 times a year and green sunfish spawn once, just the numbers, just the math on that said that at some point bluegills had to outcompete, outgrow, and out-reproduce the green sunfish. And after a span of about 3 or 4 years, they did. And so in that case, I think, here's the answer to your question. If you get enough bass big enough to eat those green sunfish, then you're going to see the green sunfish numbers go down. And if you'll feed those sunfish, you're going to see the bluegills are pretty aggressive coming to feed, and I would do that. Jeremy Day can't stay. You know what Jeremy Day has got? Jeremy Day's got a lot of stuff going on. He was here 8 minutes ago. He's gone, but he will come back. Hey, shout out to Jeremy Day from Magnolia, Texas. Okay, Ben says, it looks like a trolling motor stationary mounted to a dock that basically sucks water. Yeah, I love that. I would do that. Hey, Latham, is it true that otters go after the bigger fish first? Yes, they do. Which is aggravating because, Latham, I know what you're doing over there in Longview, Texas, Marshall, Longview area. Your mission is to try to grow some big bass. Well, river otters love big bass. Now, here's the deal. They're cute. They swim on their backs, they play with your fish, then they eat the guts out of them and leave the rest of the carcass laying on your dock. Then they poop on your dock and leave fish scales and otter poop on your dock. Then you say, oh my gosh, maybe they're not so cute. Maybe I need to do something about it. So yes, they go after the bigger fish first. Here's another little ticket about otters. River otters do the most damage in the winter. In the springtime, summertime, fall, fish are moving fast enough that most of them can escape an otter. But when the water temperature goes down, otters are warm-blooded. They don't care what the temperature is. They have fur and, stuff to help keep their bodies warm. Short span. Now, you're being pretty funny. Total Wine, Specs is not bad. You can buy Happy Water. Just kind of depends on what kind of happy water your wife likes. Mine likes Pinot Grigio chilled, and when she has that, good things happen. So you got to think about what, your ROI on that. Oh, I got distracted. Let me go back to Latham. So river otters, yes, they go after bigger fish first. Now, when you start reading the literature, the scientists that study river otters say, well, they mainly eat gizzard shad. Well, Latham, you don't have any gizzard shad. You have bass, you have bluegill, you have red ear sunfish, and you may have some other fish. But they're going to go after your big fish first. I don't really want to dwell on that, but there's the bottom line. So George, hey, you got 3 little happy icons going on there. Let me see, where else can you buy happy water? Let me think about that. I do like Specs. Total Wine's not too bad. Total Wine, I'm struggling here. Pinot Grigio. I bought some today. I'm looking at my wife in there. She's kind of got that look. after I get off of here, I might leave early. Go feed her, give her some Pinot Grigio. But you're grown up. You know what to do. You know how it's going to end, too, don't you? No innuendos here. Jay Spires have always fed Purina Aquamax Sportfish 500. Okay, let me tell you what that is. That Aquamax 500 is a prime diet, high protein, fish meal based fish food that's designed for small fish. You don't see the big explosive feedings, and part of the reason you don't is because that feed slowly sinks. So the fish aren't going to, unless they're highly competitive, they're not necessarily going to be blowing up on the surface. Purina Aquamax food that might react to, you know what? 500 Aquamax 500 is a small feed designed for small fish. If you've got some bigger fish and you want to see that explosive feeding, look at MVP. MVP has a combination of floating fish food, floating pellets, and some slowly sinking pellets. That feed is designed to provide nutrition to fish that love to explode on the surface, as well as young fish that are not quite as aggressive. One of the cool things about that, I'm going to run off on a little tangent here. I see we got more comments coming. So, you know, when people are selling you fish with superior genetics, the analogy I like to use is, let's say we've got, you guys, I may have pounded this in this show way too much, I don't know, but if you've got two AKC champion black labs and you have a litter of puppies between those two, how many of those are going to be champions? Probably none of them. How many are going to be a run? At least one. All the rest may have some genetic propensity if they get the right training and the right opportunity. Fish are no different. You may have 50,000 of the best genetic bluegills or largemouth bass or smallmouth bass or whatever, but they have different personalities and they have a different capability. I'm not going to say ability, but capability to adjust to your environment. You know, and so where I'm going with that is some of the fish are passive, some are aggressive, some grow faster, some grow slower. You know, and so what that MVP does is it gives all the fish a more equal opportunity to get the nutrition they need. So even though some of them are passive, if they get the right food, they might be able to grow to a size as they learn to be more aggressive in your pond. So that's what I would do. So got bluegill, shellcracker, largemouth bass. Did see the bass eating some of the fish food. Well, the bass are eating the red ear are not going to eat that fish food. And if they do, something happened. They became conditioned, and it'd be a handful of them. If you see a few bass eating, that's because they came to they came to eat some of the bluegill that are eating your fish food. They said, "What? Wait a minute. We can eat some bluegills, but what are those little brown nuggets?" Hey, there's Danny Mack. Howdy, Danny. Good to see you, buddy. Mark Dyer is in on the game. Todd Austin, I contacted him, but it was during COVID, so I didn't get to see his new pond yet. Hello, Jim Allen, checking in from near Louisville, Kentucky. Actually, he's just a little east of Pee Wee Valley, Kentucky. You didn't know I knew that, did you, Jim? Uh-oh, I'm trying to scroll here. Mark Dyer, if you have an overpopulation of species like black and white crappie and channel catfish, and you want to establish a healthier balance of all sport fish species, how do you decide how much biomass should be removed of the species until you see average sizes and relative weights of your other desired species return to the desired numbers? We have a 35-acre lake, and crappie and catfish are out competing the bass and bluegill. Now that's the question of the day. You're putting me to the test. You have a pencil? You have a Big Chief notebook? Let's dig into that. Here's the key. Look at that first sentence. If you have an overpopulation of species like black and white crappie and channel catfish. If you have an overpopulation of species, how do you know you do? We'll throw this back on you, Mark. How do you know you have an overpopulation? Is it because of, and you know, I'm being rhetorical here, I'm not being real literal. So when somebody asks me a question like that, that suggests to me that they know that the black crappie and the white crappie have overpopulated because they're small sizes. You know, some might be a little thicker than a postage stamp. I'm being facetious a little bit. And you want to establish a healthier balance. The way you establish a healthier balance is to do two things. One is you harvest those that are overcrowded, and number two, you manage the species that are the natural predators for those. So let's say with your black and white crappie and the average size, which I don't like using that word, because if you have black and white crappie that are 3 inches to 12 inches long and the average size is 7, that doesn't mean much. What you really want to find out is how many of those are 3 or 4 or 5 inches long. So, how big a largemouth bass do you need to be able to eat those smaller crappie, and how big a catfish do you need to eat some of those smaller crappie? A channel catfish, you can begin to equalize those by feeding them. They will come up and eat the fish food. So the way that you balance, establish a healthier balance of all those fish is to harvest those that are becoming overcrowded. And the best way to do that is to keep some numbers, keep track of some data, weigh and measure some fish. And if you got a 35-acre lake where the crappie and the catfish are out competing the bass and bluegill, then what that tells me is the bass aren't doing their job. They're undercrowded, which means you need to be either feeding the catfish, because the catfish are predators that compete with largemouth bass. Bluegill are low because you've got all these other fish that eat their young of the year, which crappie, channel catfish, and bass will absolutely, beyond any doubt, eat small bluegills. When a channel catfish hits about 2 to 2.5 pounds, it becomes a top-end predator. People think that channel catfish are scavengers. They're not. They're like teenagers. When they go to the refrigerator and open the door, they're after meat. And if they can't get meat, then they'll eat something else. So anytime there's a prey fish available, those predator fish are going to eat it. So in a 35-acre lake, working with, I don't know if you own the whole lake or if there's other people there, but harvesting some of those species that are overcrowded and trying to manage for bigger catfish and bigger bass, that's going to help you nail some of those overcrowded fish. George Spann, my ROA ain't what it used to be. Well, you need to lower your expectations and go to specs. That's a pretty good variety. Drew Bachman, I have a kudzu and thorn issue around 250 feet from my half-acre stock spring-fed pond. My land gradually slopes toward the pond. If I spray a weed killer, can that kill fish? Hey Drew, my Carolina, my cackalack friend, if you will follow the label on whatever material you choose, do it on a day that's not windy, mist it onto the plant and don't have any drift, you have no issues with killing fish, because you know what it takes to knock out kudzu and some of the what's the thorn I'm trying to think of the name of that plant, and I know what it is, then you're not going to have any issues with your fish. Mark Dyer, do you have any experience or knowledge with the new ultrasonic technology that's being used in places to control algae blooms? Saw a post from Stephen Barden installing it on the pond to control HAB. I do have a little bit of knowledge about that. I'm pretty excited about it, actually. The thing about this ultrasonic technology, it's what it basically tries to do is to invade the cellular structure of those plants and cause them to erupt. And when a cell erupts, then it can't live. It's got to give up what's inside of it, which completely disrupts its ability to reproduce. Now I tell you what, Stephen Barden, guys, listen to me. Stephen Barden is a freaking rock star. That guy is a young superstar in our industry. I'm so proud of that guy. I cannot tell you how much I love that guy. He is astonishingly good. The ultrasonic technology is experimental, and all the so far all the R&D that they've done on it looks pretty good. But it's guys like Steven that are going to take it to work, put it see its value out in the real world, and I'm excited to find out what he finds out. John Henry is apparently going to start making large feed pellets again. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So I was at Purina's research farm 2 weeks ago. Today's what, Tuesday? I guess it is because I'm broadcasting. I was there 2 weeks ago Thursday. And I spent time with Dr. Mike Schlegel, who was one of the decision makers to take Aquamax largemouth off the market. Now, he's got people above him that were kind of pushing that decision, but that decision was made, they made the decision to stop making Aquamax largemouth. And their justification was, well, we've got too many SKUs with low volume sales, and it confuses the dealers. Now, I'm an ambassador, and they should have talked to me about that, which that may sound a little pompous, but I don't care. You know, I'm one of the guys out there helping them sell it, and when I find out from a client or a reader or somebody watching this show that they've stopped selling it, and I find out from them, pisses me off. They need to tell me themselves so I can have a little input into that. So I asked Dr. Schlegel, who I like a lot, I said, hey, Mike, if somebody wants to buy that, what do they have to do? He says, well, we'd have to sell at least 3 tons. So I said, we might be able to do that. So what will it take? He said, well, they've already taken the SKU out of the system. Well, that don't mean they took the dyes out of the system. Doesn't mean they can't make a couple of runs of it every year. So he told me that he would check with his higher ups, which that's the line they use when they don't want to tell you if they can do it or not. And he told me to get back to me, which hasn't happened yet. Hey, let's take a minute, do a little commercial. Pond Boss, hey, you know what I'm going to say. Say it for me. $35 a year, and that's right, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Pond Boss Magazine. I tell you what, that's the economy that fuels this, although I'm going to keep doing this. I'm not going to try to trick you into buying it. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to Pond Boss, go online, pondboss.com, $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date. It lasts a year. Yeah, I got a funny story. A good friend of mine, Sherman Wyman, he was a partner in Pond Boss for a while, and as I got to know him, his daddy was a professor at the University of Texas at Arlington, and Sherman is he's an investor, a land buyer. He's a business guy that likes to figure out how to make money. What I like to figure out is how to help you have a better pond. Well, when I was talking to Sherman at one time, I talked to him a lot, so he said, when the Texas Rangers came to Texas, he said, my daddy loved baseball. And his daddy was a philosophy professor at UTA. He said, my daddy took me to a game one time, and he said, he wanted me to hear the crack of the bat and smell the fresh cut grass and smell the popcorn and listen to the vendors going up and down the stand. Hey, beer here. Get your peanuts and all that kind of stuff. And he said, I couldn't wrap my brain around that, because he said all I could see was there was 25,000 people at that ballpark, and if every one of them gave me $1, I'd have $25,000 and they wouldn't miss anything. So his point was we all have a different philosophy. We'll have a different take. So I'm going to keep trying to get Purina Mills to try to figure out how to keep making that fish food. I'm not even sure why I told you that story, but I thought it was kind of fun. I've lost track. All right, so, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night day. Texas Hunter products, don't forget about those guys. I ordered a couple of feeders for clients this week, and I love Texas Hunter because not only do they have great products, they have great customer service. I can send an order for a feeder in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and that feeder's out the door at 2 o'clock, and the customer has it the next day or the day after. And if there's any issues with it, which is rare, they're on it. They get it done. They handle it. I'll tell you what, I haven't seen Wayne Lancaster checking in, but Wayne and Josie, oh my gosh, those two kids have had the weirdest luck of anybody ever. They've got a place, I don't know, probably 50 miles from me, over near Iredell, Texas, and they have had 2 catastrophic floods in less than a year, where the water's gone over their dam, This last time, water flowed through their barn. They're building a house, and they've stored all their materials in a barn, and water flowed through it 8 inches deep, soaked a bunch of fixtures and stuff, covered his feeder up. He had a feeder on the dock. The feeder was submerged underwater. Well, after the water went down, Wayne cleaned the feeder out, and everything worked. Even the electronics. The timer worked, both motors worked, the battery was good. He's got a great testimony about Texas Hunter products. Unfortunate that he went through that. Fortunate that he had a Texas Hunter feeder. And if you're going to have Texas Hunter feeder, I'm still a pretty big fan of Purina Mills. I mean, I endorse those guys because way back in 1995, they invited me to help them start developing new fish foods because they saw our industry as one that was going to be a burgeoning market, and they wanted to have an imprint in that market, and they've done that. And they'll make decisions like, well, we're not going to sell largemouth pellets anymore without talking to me, but their products are still good products. So I do endorse them. I do like what they're doing. Sometimes I don't like how they do it. Let's see what Scott's got to say. Growth rate question in Missouri. I love Missouri. Missouri is such a cool state. Beautiful state. You guys can grow some fish there. We can't grow here in Texas like tiger muskies. We were talking about those earlier. All right, growth rate question in Missouri from Scott Grazu. Bass, first year 8 inches, second year 12 inches, third year 15 inches. Does that seem accurate? Yeah, that seems accurate for an average. So Scott, your first year you should see bass ranging in size from 8 to 12 inches. The second year, they should range in size from 10 to 14 inches, 15 inches. Third year, they should range in size from 13 to 17 inches. Now, up in northwest Missouri near Drexel, I've got a lake under management where we had some bass knocking on the door of 5 pounds just after 2 years. So with your average, you're right. First year bluegills, that means at 5 inches, you're feeding them. Second year, 7, yep. Third year, 8. That's pretty accurate. I just tagged some fish to get more data, but this was what I believe I'm seeing so far. That is a good average. That is a normal average. Based on your management strategy, that's not exceptional. That's average. Which average, we like average because in a natural environment, average is what we're after. Scott and Leah checking in from Beggs, Oklahoma. Doug, you don't ever have to apologize about being late. Just go back and watch it from the start when we're done. Okay, per relative weights in fish survey. Mark Dyer, okay. Well, per relative weights give you a clue as to what fish need to be harvested. If the relative weights, here's a really important fact to know. In order for a 14-inch bass, for example, to get to 14 inches, it's got to weigh 1 pound 5 ounces, 1 pound 7 ounces. If it weighs 1 pound 2 ounces, it lost weight. So when you've got poor relative weights, there's 2 reasons for it. You're either weighing and measuring immediately post-spawn, and that's normal to have poor relative weights after spawn, or the fish are undernourished and overcrowded. If they're undernourished and overcrowded, harvest some that size. Can crappie be shocked in shallow water? Absolutely. My 75-acre community lake have thousands of 9-inch white crappie that I see and catch on a live scope in 5 to 8 feet of water depth, a couple feet down in April and May. Our crappie don't float. Yes, they do. They float really, really, really well. I'm not sure how to get 15,000 9-inch crappie in check. You need to have 1,000 15-inch bass to get those 9-inch crappie. 15 to 17-inch bass. If you had 300 17-inch plus largemouth bass, they would get those 15,000 crappie. Cheaper. I love Jay. There you go. You got my catchphrase, dude. Use it. Hello, Greg Baird. I got a dead cow in the lake when I was drinking. Should I leave it for the catfish or drag it up for coyote shooting? What are you drinking? Greg, drag the cow out. I'm not even blinking on this one. Drag the cow out. Because Even if the fish could eat a cow, it's like eating an elephant, you and me. One bite at a time, but it's going to take us a long time. And by the time that cow rots, your water is going to go. So, dude, Greg, go get the tractor right now. Get off this show. Get off your computer. Get off your phone. Go get a tractor and some straps or chains or whatever before that cow falls apart and melts down in your pond. Drag it out. Pull it across the dam. Get you some night vision goggles and shoot the coyotes that are going to come and chew it from the backside in. I really did say that. If there is a way I could take my bag of 600 and MVP, here's Jim Allen, my good friend. And Jim, you sent me emails. I am so far behind emails, I'll get to it, I promise. Is there a way I could take my bag of 600 and MVP and extrude bass-sized nuggets? I'd do it. You know what? I get it. I know, I get it. Jay Spires agrees that Texas Hunter Feeder has been great. And a couple small issues, they have stood behind it and got me taken care of. Also, shout out to Mitchell Morton. I love Mitchell Morton. Dude, I'll tell you what. This fisheries industry that I'm in has got some absolutely cool characters. And Mitchell Morton is one of those guys. Mitchell Morton is not only, hey, and Jay, tell him I said this and have him come look at this show at 46 minutes and 23 seconds, 25 seconds, 27, never mind, whatever time it is. Tell him I gave him a shout out, but I'm going to tell you something. Mitchell Morton is an absolute stud. That guy is an industry leader, and he's also a great jazz musician. If you ever, I have not been able to go watch him play, but I've heard all about it. That guy is stellar, and it's Mitchell Morton is one of those guys that's a leader, even though he's in a capacity as an employee, he is a leader in this industry. And I tell you what, I cannot say too many great things about Mitchell Morton with Johnny Foster. Johnny Foster, he's one of those handfuls of guys that are my age, that helped start this industry way, way, way back in the day. And Johnny Foster's been at it from Cary, North Carolina forever, 45 years, something like that. And I am so proud of that company to become what they are now. Those guys are studs. So you know what? Looks like we're kind of running out of questions, and I'm running out of topics, and I haven't had supper yet. And I think my wife wants to run up and get something to eat. And since I bought her some Pinot Grigio, although I didn't get it from Specs, I think we're going to go do that. So you know what? Hey, this is always so much fun, and I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I don't know where I'm going to be next Tuesday, but I got a good feeling I'm going to be hanging out with you. Oh, you know what? I didn't tell you about the river. We spent time on the Brazos River today. We caught spotted bass, largemouth bass. We caught stripers, sand bass or white bass, and we saw a bunch of gar. There's two different kinds of gar. We had a great time, and I want to encourage everybody to get out on the water as much as you can. Mark Dyer, our lake is rough fish that stir up the bottom, leading to increased algae and harmful algal blooms. We're having a fight netting plan in the future to reduce the love fish, rough fish with the ultrasonic algae. You know what, Mark? I would get in touch with Stephen Barton and talk to him about it. I think that could be. I think it could be. Yes. Danny Mack. Danny, I don't know what you're having tonight. With some experiment, you could hydrate the feed to a mush and run it to a sausage maker, then dry it quickly and thoroughly. I don't know. Hey, Danny, you're the only guy on the planet that I know that would do that, and you're absolutely right. It will work. So, hey, everybody, listen, I really appreciate you tuning in tonight. And I love hanging out with you. I love your questions. Thanks for keeping me sharper, although I don't know if I'm sharp enough, but I do appreciate it. I love the questions. Hey, subscribe to Pond Boss Magazine, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Hey, the Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology is coming up next week, and we got a full house. Thank goodness. I was kind of hoping that would happen, but we're going to have a big time, and we'll be thinking about you guys, but I will be talking to you right before that. So I'll check in with you next Tuesday night, wherever I am, probably right here, where my wife built a set right here in our house. So until next week, adios for now.